Welcome back to another Fusion World video here with Chris, and today we're going to be bringing back a series that I've done on the channel for quite some time with Dragon Ball Masters. And I did it with the first set of Fusion World, which is called State of the Meta. So this is a series where we basically talk about the meta game for a particular color, or we do it overall, just kind of depends on the topic of the video. And we will be breaking down each color in kind of I would say a brief summary before we get into set 3. Now with these videos, what I will be doing, I will not be doing any sort of deck profiles until set 3. I might do some before the next, probably before Gen Con. I might do a few decks, maybe one from each color that I think is probably the most viable, or maybe two. So we'll look into doing that, but normally we'll end up doing a deck profile for each deck in the color. So today we're going to be starting off with green, as you guys saw from the video header, and we'll be breaking down green pretty, I won't say it's extensively, but just a good summary of the leaders and kind of what to expect if you are playing green or playing against green. So make sure, if you guys do like the videos, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, videos at least weekly until we kind of get to a more consistent place with being able to make content, if I can never get back to the point of making content, because it's pretty time consuming. So as I said, today we're starting green, and this is we have a pretty deep meta for green. We have obviously these 4 leaders here, and green has not been very popular, as everybody knows, for most of the duration of set 2. All of these leaders have just been kind of taking a back seat to the likes of Topku, as most decks have, because green just had a really bad Topku matchup, which was too fast, and green just took way too long to kind of develop. So why is green more popular now? Well, with Topku being gone, when I say gone, quote unquote, I just mean from its tier 0 ability, green has now made an emergence. And we've already seen one regional where we've seen the Android deck end up taking that deck, which we'll talk about once the deck lists and stuff are out, or once I get around to actually making that. We will be discussing that regional a little bit. And although he won, if you guys watch the stream, he won very. He got, I would say, lucky, but he kind of got a little lucky that the Frieza players he was going against did not have any combo power. So, but with that, I do think green is in probably the most favorable spot, as most people would say. Everyone thought it was just going to be a completely green meta, and I don't think we're going to get back to just it being, 70% green decks. I don't think we'll ever see that again. I think there's too much variety now in the game when it comes to leaders, and just every color, even red, seems viable to some extent, right? And we're going to see this, and I don't know why people don't like this, the whole idea of a triangle meta, but I mean, all 4 colors are still pretty good. Red took the biggest hit, but red is still a very playable color. So but in this video we'll be going over these 4 leaders here and just kind of dissecting them a little bit one by one. So we'll start with the first regional winner of the 2.5 format, which is going to be the droid deck. Now droids probably got the biggest buff among all the green decks going into this set, obviously with all the Topku changes, but they did get a little piece of tech we'll talk about in a second that sort of allowed this leader to be relevant for the first time since actually I guess really since the game came out. This deck has never been relevant. It's always been outshined by Broly and Gohan, and then with Cell emerged in set 2, Cell actually had just better tools at the beginning. Now Androids has sort of been taking the place of the de facto green deck in a lot of people's eyes, and I disagree a little bit, but we will kind of go over how the deck sort of functions. So most builds, I would say the majority of builds, are going to go around this lab field spell here, Dr. Jiro's lab. This does not cost 6 energy, it costs 1. Just the G looks like, it's G for green, right? But this field spell allows you to ramp once per turn, right? You're not actually sacrificing an energy, you're basically just replacing the energy and then adding a rest moded card, basically. They could have just taken off the green text and just said you tap it, but I understand they wanted to make it a little bit fair. This is a way for you to be able to just benefit from that early curve. However, you do need to see this card on turn 3. There's an Android card you can play that you can search this card out and activate it, which you probably will play in most of your builds, at least as a one of. But you do need to see this card. You need to see it turn 3, be able to play it. And honestly, this doesn't feel even that bad to play when you're looking at turn 2 with a marker, or turn 2 with a marker. You can still play it, sacrifice the energy marker, then next turn go into 3 energy, and then ramp from there, right? And then you do have a pretty consistent ramp after that. Between that and the next card we're going to show, you ramp pretty quickly. But if you don't see this card, you definitely lose a lot of your curve potential, as most green decks do when they're completely focused on that turn 3 ramp. You just need to be able to hit that. So unfortunately, this is searchable by 2 cards now that you can play. As they add more cards, this will probably become even more searchable, and that's even if this deck is still being played at that particular time. But the card that really makes this deck sort of work is going to be this new 4-drop Android 17 and 18. Play it, you crack 2 energy, you play 3 energy back. So you're gaining an energy. You're still playing it on curve, so you're playing it turn on 4 energy, and then you're getting 5, and you're getting 3 energy back technically. So you can still use your lab. You still have energy up for defense. And this card being a 10k, being searchable, this card allows you to really sort of ramp up in the mid game. Now, I will say there's definitely a build of this deck where you can play where you're not really heavily focused on the lab. And what that does, that actually cuts out a lot of dead cards out of your deck. So one of my fears with this deck, as I'm going to show you with this next slide here, is that this deck has to run a lot of 0k cards. So like you have the 4 labs, you have this Krillin card, which allows you to search out 18 Android cards, or 1 green extra cards, which actually just says 1 extra card, but you know what I mean. So you can search out the field, you search out all of the other extra cards in the green pool. You also can search out your boss monster here, which is the 6-drop double striker. So you can really search a lot of tools. But the problem is you are running very, very heavy into these 0k combos, which is going to be really detrimental for you if you're playing into a heavy yellow or red format. You really need that combo power, and you only have so much. You probably have 14, 15 cards that are in your deck that are dead, essentially, if you are not charging all of them, right? And you kind of need to not charge them because these cards are very, very powerful. So a card like this Krillin here, I know a lot of people say that this card is incredibly good. I think it's pretty abysmal for what you need to do, right? Being a 20k is cool. Like, you can search out the extra card, you can search out the thing. That's all great, but you really have to limit what you're playing, and that's, I think, where the downfall of this deck will be as we kind of shift into more of this mid game, aggressive sense with like yellow really coming back. This is going to hurt a lot of green decks. If you guys did watch the regional, the Android 17-18 player got very, very lucky with his opponent not basically hand dumping on an attack that he should have won the game with. Obviously that happens sometimes in the game, but if that particular situation is played out 10 times, the Frieza player is probably winning the majority of those, just because of how many dead cards that you run. So that is something you have to kind of worry about. Definitely one of the decks I think you can tweak really heavily, and maybe you're not really playing a lot of the 8 drops, you're just maybe capping out at the 6, and then just kind of filling those extra few, maybe 5 slots or so with 10Ks, I think will super benefit this deck. And if we get any sort of Android support in this next set, in set 3, we could definitely see a change in how this deck is going to be played. Next is going to be Broly, which I talked about pretty heavily in, well, I won't say heavily, but I did talk about it in the tier list. I think this deck has probably the, it's considered maybe the dark horse of all the green decks. Which is weird to say because Broly did very, very well in set 1. Again, with yellow being so prominent, this deck does seem to struggle against, did struggle against yellow, mainly because of Cooler. Now we're seeing more Frieza, we're seeing Vegeta, which I think Broly can sort of handle itself. I think Broly's biggest weakness is going to be a deck like U7, where U7 is swinging with 25 and 30Ks consistently, and that's what's going to kind of melt your hand. So why play Broly? Well, Broly has a few different tools that does add to its its playability. So one is going to be the Paragus and the Shimoan combination. Being able to reoccur these blockers in some matchups, this is just going to die, but it is 5k that you can recur pretty consistently. And it also helps that both of the Paragus cards you can play are both 10ks. So you do get some use out of these cards because they are 10ks. And then you can recycle this guy here, which is just great, just having a 5k that you can recycle, which getting you to 30 is pretty decent. And also just having a card you can recycle every time that you either swing with this guy or you activate mana on this guy, you can get this card back. Then we have the boss monster, obviously, for green. And Broly fits obviously into any green deck. In this deck, obviously, it just kind of plays on theme. But this card is kind of being our pseudo SCR for green. You're not really playing. You might play one Gohan in some decks, but most of the time you're not really, you're not even going to play Gohan. This is considered your secret rare, right? Now this kind of falls into the same trap, right? You're running, this card as a 4 of maybe in Broly decks, but you do have some other Broly cards now to consider. So you have both of these cards here. Both of these are actually Broly BR cards, which is very funny. But you kind of have a lot of different cards you can play from. So obviously this promo here can be played in any green deck. It's 7 cost. It draws you 2 cards, which actually is pretty relevant. Being a 7 cost 40k, that saves you 1 energy up for Gigantic Meteor. That could be a lifesaver. This is going to draw you some more cards. And then this 7 drop here I find to be incredibly good. Activate main. If your leader is Broly, you choose one of your cards or one of your opponent's cards and add them to their owner's energy and rest mode. So this card also has removal as well in the activate main step. So these cards here I think are going to be pretty relevant, and I think as Broly sort of transitions into not just trying to just turbo out the 8 drop, you can really sort of stabilize with these 7 drops as well, just having another big body that your opponent has to remove. And if they don't, now they're dealing with a 40k on that swing plus 2 45ks and then a 30k from your leader. Next is going to be Gohan, which is my favorite green deck currently. As I said in the tier list, I think Gohan is the only green deck that has the ability of being able to match a lot of these combo decks of when they're going for game, but also just these the blue decks, right? Blue probably has the best combo power right now out of any of the 4 decks, and Gohan is being able to match match the Vegeta leader effect, and then maybe -1 card from hand. Gohan can kind of play in the mid game much better than the other 3 decks can. I would say maybe more so than Cell and Broly. Androids can kind of play in the mid game now with the new 4 drop, but Gohan can be a mid-range green deck and doesn't have to just focus on playing out 8 drop bodies, which is very, very important, and allows him to sort of shift to whatever deck he is playing against. You can sort of kind of cater your playstyle around that. Now the old Gohan matchups, like the mirrors and just set 1 in general, you were really playing this 5 drop. This was kind of your big card you would play, right? You play it, you ramp. Now your leader effect becomes cheaper, for free, I should say. And this is kind of what you played a lot in set 1. Now this card can be removed pretty quickly now. This card actually is more so just an afterthought now. You have so many other cards that are allowing you to ramp from turn 3 on that you don't have to just focus on playing this card. Obviously it's good to have the effect, but sometimes you can just burn the energy because you're not so focused on just dropping 8 drops. Again, you're probably playing in that 5 to 7 energy range anyways, so now that extra energy you're getting is just being used for the activate battle. One of those cards that I feel makes this deck so much more relevant is going to be this 3-drop Goku here. It only works in this leader, and you can put any of your opponent's battle cards 5 or less into their energy while also ramping this card on your own. Why this card is good is this card gets around one of Green's biggest problems, which is KO effects, or the negation of KOing effects. So things like the 3-drop Vegeta, things like the blue Zamasu. Both of these cards say they cannot be KO'd, or I should say, like Zamasu says, when it's KO'd, you play it back out. Right, so it kind of stops it from being able to, be destroyed every turn. What this card does is, because it's not being removed by a KO, it's being put into the energy, so it's being removed by a skill, allows you to basically remove those cards. And you being able to hit 5 cost cards for 3 energy is very valuable. So this card also gives you a kind of a little twist in the middle of the game, especially if you're playing against a green deck. Or, I'm sorry, you're playing against a yellow deck. They play the 3-drop Vegeta SR. Now you can play this, swing into one of the cards that are in rest mode, and then just activate main, bounce the Vegeta back to the energy. Now they don't have that card on board. Now they have to reestablish another Vegeta, and you can do it again. You can swing into it now. It's just going to, force them to. You're basically paying 3 energy for 3 energy, but then you're also getting a ramp as well. So it's definitely a double benefit there. But this card can actually be pretty, defining for Gohan, depending on how many you play, and depending on how many blue and yellow decks you play against. It's really good into those two matchups. Not so much into green. Into red, it's okay, but more so into the blue and the yellow matchup. This card's going to be key for Gohan decks to be able to win going forward. And before we go on to Cell, this card here I think also allows Gohan to sort of be a better mid-range and also finishing deck than a deck like the Android deck. So most green decks and most lists that you'll see for most green decks, everyone is playing like 2 to 3 of the 6-drop Android. And as great as that card is, it's a 40k, it KOs 2 cards. It's 0k combo power, right? In this deck, you play so many Son Gokus. This is a 6-drop that has double strike, and it is a 10k. So now you have the ability of, keeping multiple of these cards in your hand and using them as combo power. So you have extra ways of either surviving or being able to go in for the kill. So this is a card that I think everybody should pick up if you are playing Gohan. There's some cool little promo ones as well that are like $1.50, I think, right now. So I would probably get those. But this card here is going to be very helpful, and moving forward, I know there's a Chi-Chi that came out in set 2 that can actually search this card. So now you have a searchable 6-drop that you can play in your Gohan decks. So I think it's pretty cool. And then last is going to be Cell. As I talked about Cell at the beginning of the video, I think so Cell is definitely the slowest probably out of all the green decks. Its focus is really to play out the Cell Games arena. On turn 4, now you can start ramping or adding a card to your hand. What's cool about this is that you can obviously just add the card to your hand so you get the extra draw, or you can decide to ramp if you so choose. That is really cool. The fact you get to look at the card first definitely gives it a little more of an advantage instead of just playing, the destructive strength cards or just ramping a card from the top of your deck, right? Also being able to just go up to 6 energy every time that you crack life or crack energy. Once you go down to 5, it's pretty powerful as well. I think why we haven't seen a lot of Cell, probably why we won't see too much Cell until maybe set 3, is the actual archetype itself is kind of bland. They don't have enough to really kind of solidify itself as its own deck, right? Like they're playing like Saiyan cards that are probably better off in Broly or even better off in Gohan, and then you're playing some of the Android cards, but those are actually better in the Droid deck. So you don't really have a big archetype of cards that are really meant for Cell. Here are 2 that I do find to be pretty interesting. The 3-drop Tragedy and Ginger Town is pretty interesting. So if you're playing a lot of Earthling cards, you can, if they stay on board obviously, you can use this to just put all of them into your energy, which can give you a pretty huge boost in your energy for the following turn, right? So you have 3 battle cards on board, you can pay 3, you basically get to ramp 3 energy. That's really good, but you also have the ability, you also have to like make sure that those cards stay on board, they don't die, they get, they don't get bounced, and that can sort of be a problem. And then you have this 3-drop Cell that can put any 4 or less Earthling into the opponent's energy. This might be a little more popular next set, and this also is not leader locked. So if you're playing any green deck, this might be a card to pick up, especially with blue probably going to be diving into a lot more Earthlings with their new archetype. I think this would be a pretty powerful card, but right now it's just not really seeing any sort of play. So as I said, the Cell archetype is just pretty weak. So there's not too much reason to actually play this leader over playing droids. You do have this card as well. Obviously the 8-drop Cell, being able to crack your own energy, and then you can pay, you're basically then can just get the energy, one of the energies back with Cell. With the leader, and then you can play this 2-drop Cell Jr., which also allows you to grab back an extra card. So this card here is pretty relevant, obviously, with any of the green decks you're going to play Cell in, which is more than likely just going to be droids and this deck. But this card will be pretty impactful going forward, being able to grab any extra card back, right? This will also include if we get any more 8-drop cells in the future, because this card works with any of them, and it's not leader locked as well too. So, but that does it for the video. Give me what your choice for best green deck is right now in the format, and as to why. Give me a a good explanation. I think, as I said, I think all 4 of these decks have the ability of winning games. For me, I think Gohan is the best one. I know consensus right now is I think the Android 17-18 deck, everyone is saying it's the best. But you guys let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys have any questions, obviously let me know. And like I said, we'll start pumping out some decks before Gen Con. I want to get some ideas out there just to kind of help anybody who is going to be going to Gen Con. Hopefully I'll be able to go.